Camellya is right around the corner, and this is a full guide for her. I'll explain everything you need to know from the materials required, echo build, weapons, best teams, rotation, and if you should actually pull or not for her and her resonance chain. But before we get into it, make sure you are subscribed to me so you don't miss the latest news and info on Wuthering Waves. Okay, here we go. Let's start with the basics. Camellya is a Havoc sword user and main DPS. Now, I'll quickly show you all the materials that you need for her. You can already find all of these right now, so don't waste any time and start pre-farming. Her signature weapon will also need metallic drips, and it has crit rate main stat. Its effect is basically a 12% attack buff and a massive boost to her basic attack damage. As you will see later, Camellya relies a lot on basic attack damage. If you already have Changli's weapon, I think you could use it if you don't have enough for this one. And if you're not going to have any, then I recommend the standard 5-star. And if you still don't have any of that, then just use any 4-star attack percent sword, I guess, but it's going to be much worse. Moving on to the Echo build. Since she is a Havoc main DPS, you want to use the Sun Sinking Eclipse set as it will buff your Havoc damage by a lot after using your basic or heavy attacks. For the 4th cost, it's a bit tricky because we have Dreamless and Crownless. None of them are really good for her. Dreamless is really fast to cast but only does damage. It doesn't provide any buffs to Camellya. And Crownless takes a long time to cast, but will provide a 12% Havoc and 12% skill buff. I don't think any of them are worth using in battle, so you can technically equip any of them. I personally will go with Crownless for the buff it provides, just in case. Then, depending on your weapon, you want to have either crit rate or crit damage on it. Her signature weapon gives crit rate, so for me, it will be crit damage on the 4 cost. Then for the 3 cost, you want to have Havoc, or 1 attack, 1 Havoc. It makes the grind a bit easier, and the result is pretty much the same. Just don't use 2 attack percent. And finally, for the 1 cost, you want to have attack percent as always. Now let's quickly go over the substats. Sorted by importance, I would say crit rate and crit damage, then attack, basic attack, and eventually some energy regen. With all of that out of the way, let's see what her best teams would be. We have 2 very good options right now, and they're 4-star, so that's nice. First, we have Sanhua. Especially at S6, she's an insane sub-DPS with a fast concerto gain, basically perfect for Camellya. But you also have Dun Jin, since she will provide more Havoc damage. Also, I have to warn you, in 2.0, so about 45 days from now, we will get a new Havoc sub-DPS called Rikako. She will basically be the best sub-DPS for her, so just know that Sanhua or Donjin or whatever you want to use right now will be temporary. Camellya can also be played as duo DPS, with Changli, for example, but it will be very tricky. I think most people won't really benefit from this playstyle. Just know that this is possible. And finally, the part you've all been waiting for, her kit and rotation. I'm not gonna get into the details because she's not released yet, so I couldn't play her. But from reading her kit, I can give you a general idea. But before, I just want to talk about her resonance chain real quick. Basically, all of them are damage buffs, as you would expect. Her S1 gives 28% more crit damage. Her S2 is a 120% damage buff to her skill. S3 is a 50% damage buff to her liberation, and also gives her 58% more attack during her budding mode. That we will see later. That's pretty insane in my opinion. I think S3 will be really powerful. Then S4 is a basic attack buff for your whole team. Her S5 buffs the outro skill and intro by 303% and 68%. And finally, her S6 buffs her forte circuit by an insane amount, so this one will also be very powerful. In my opinion, you should either go for S0, S1, S3, or S6, depending on your budget. Well, let's move on to her kit. Firstly, pretty much all of her kit is considered as basic attack damage except her liberation. Okay, so her skill is what makes her transform from white hair to red hair. It's called Blossom Mode. During this state, she is suspended on vines, and that's when she starts doing crazy combos, and probably some good damage. Then in her forte, she has a pretty important mechanic. Basically, when her concerto is full, she will consume it to deal damage to the enemy and enters budding mode. Her basic attacks and skill are now doing 50% more damage. Knowing that, we can now figure out a basic rotation for her. It would be something like this. After casting your buffs on your healer and your sub DPS, you swap to Camellya and start with her skill to deal damage while filling your concerto. After that, you want to cast her skill once again, which will make her enter the budding mode, as I said, until you fill her concerto once again. You can probably use her liberation during this time. And then finally, swap back to your healer. You could also decide to skip the budding mode for a faster rotation, I guess. But yeah, I'll make sure to keep you updated when she releases because I need to learn how to play her myself too. Alright, make sure to use my link in my bio if you're going to pull for her. Since lunites, they are nearly 20% cheaper than in-game, and it also helps me a lot to keep making these videos. And don't forget to subscribe. Alright, good luck with your pulls and see you next time for more Wuthering Waves.